Welcome to the Spirit-Centered Business Podcast, where we blend the spiritual with the practical for supernatural results. Now, here is your host, Bralynn Newby.
Well, hello there. Welcome to Spirit-Centered Business. I'm Bralynn Newby, and I'm here with Zari Banks. And isn't that an awesome name for a wealth person? Zari Banks. Come on now. All right. So I just have a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce you to the peeps. So over on SpiritCenteredBusiness.com, I've got a couple free things. A lot of free things, actually. You can take a business assessment that will tell you where you are on your Spirit-Centered Business journey. And there's also in the store a free 5-day Gates Checkup Challenge, which a lot of people have found very good to move them forward and get things unstuck and moving again in their business. So that's over on SpiritCenteredBusiness.com. Go ahead and pick up all the free stuff you want. Or the way that I joined, or the way that I found Zari, or she found me, she joined the Business Ecclesia group, which you are free to do as well. So Zari, you're such a blessing. And now that I'm almost done, not quite done, in the middle of reading your book, My Money Grows on Trees, which who doesn't want that, right? I'm just so glad that we got connected. So why don't you begin by telling your story, which is so cool, and then we'll get into some gold nuggets of your teaching.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, I bless you in Jesus' name. It's an honor to be here. And yes, take the business assessment. I took that business assessment and the Holy Spirit started speaking to me right away. And we totally revamped the way I do business last year.
Oh my gosh.
Business assessment was powerful. Just like having to answer the questions, and ask Holy Spirit, how do I answer this? What's true about this? What's true about this? And he was telling me about myself and what he saw in me and what he desired of me. So just the business assessment that she formulated for you is going to connect you with Holy Spirit in a way that hasn't been happening for you before for your business. So do that and then join the Ecclesia also, because you need it. You really, really need it. But
wow, Zari, I didn't know you did that. I didn't mean for this to be a promo, but yeah, okay. Thank you.
Well, I'm saying, like, if even your business assessment is anointed, just imagine what everything else is like when you really connect.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So my story is a good one. It is a wonderful testimony of the Lord doing amazing things in our lives. And that's where my ministry and everything else came out of, is just encountering the Lord for myself. So I was a believer since I was 7 years old. And I've known that I wanted to be a teacher, a lawyer, and a writer since I was 7 years old. The Lord told me that, and I knew it, and I am living those things out. So right after I got saved at 7 years old, my grandparents had allowed a traveling minister to have a tent meeting in their property that they owned attached to their home and their businesses and stuff. Mm-hmm. So right after I got saved, I ran back over to the house with two of my cousins, and we were sitting down in my grandma's pink room at her house. And I was like giving them the gospel message that I had just heard. And I'm like, are you guys ready to be saved? And they both just jumped up and took off. And I've known since then that I was supposed to be a teacher, but it didn't connect with me until later that I was supposed to be teaching the word of God. So I did end up there, but I went into public education first. So I grew up in like every church system you could be in. I went to the African Methodist Episcopal. I went to Baptist. I went to, the Church of God and all this stuff. And I never really was given the opportunity or the understanding that I could have an intimate relationship with the Godhead. Matter of fact, the very first church that I was going to right after I got saved when I was little, my family church, they said things like, you'll never have an intimate relationship with the Godhead because you're not a pastor, pastor's wife, or pastor's kid. Yeah, so that's the kind of foolishness I grew up in. And, just kind of crazy stuff. Wow. And then so, I went through life doing whatever I was going to do. And I moved to Arizona from Washington State, which is where I'm originally from. I closed my eyes and kind of like picked a place. And I'm like, Lord, put me in a place that has a law school, because I was ready to go to law school after undergrad. And I landed on Tucson, Arizona. They have a law school at the U of A. So I was applying there and getting ready to go to law school. Met a guy, had a child. And so I dumped that law school and then went and got a master's degree in education. So I ended up being a teacher, like a public education teacher. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a long time. super successful at that. I was promoted every year, given lots of opportunity to do all kinds of things. I traveled, I taught, I recorded videos for the state, teaching videos for other teachers and things like that. Lots of people from all over the nation and stuff were coming to monitor me because I was such a great reading teacher and all of that stuff. And I apologize, dogs are barking. I'm sorry.
Oh, dogs happen. It's okay.
And so became a teacher. Loved it. And I loved being on a schedule where, I could really take care of my son, because I am, my love language, primary love language is quality time. And I like to be with my people, right? I'm a small group person. I'm super loyal, ridiculously loyal. And I just like my small group people. And I didn't want somebody else raising my child, The thing about the Lord has gifted me being a teacher is that I can see when people understand, when they don't understand, I can read kids' feelings and all of that stuff when they're getting it, when they're not getting it, and how they're receiving things, how they're interpreting things. And in the moment, he would just download to me, a different way to explain something so that they would get it. And so I just, I love teaching. That's just what I do. I'm constantly teaching. And you'll notice that as I talk, I have to explain everything to you, give you the background all the way to the end instead of just saying one thing to you.
I'm the same way. Well, because of the learning styles,
Right.
there's why, how, what, and what if. So we've got to say it different ways at least, right?
Yeah. So ended up being a teacher. And so I taught in the classroom, taught first grade for a long time. First grade's the best, in my opinion. Taught first grade for a long time. And plus I'm so short, I'm like 5'1". So the kids are still smaller than me at that point. But I've also taught everything, I've taught all the way up to, now I'm teaching adults, so.
Yeah.
But I did that and for a few years, and then I became what's called an instructional coach. It's where you coach, other teachers. And so I did that for a couple of years. The second year I switched to a different district, and then 2008 happened and I got laid off. So I went through all of that, just trauma, just all kind of trauma, getting laid off, my house foreclosed, and I lost custody of my son. Because when I got laid off, I was looking for another teaching job, making what I had made after all of my years. I'd already taken a pay cut by switching districts for 1 year, but then I, lost this position that was outside of the classroom and everything. And it was like going from a decent salary back to $25,000 a year. And I'm like, I can't do that. And my son was going to private Christian school, and, I couldn't do it. I couldn't pay a mortgage and stuff like that. So I asked the Lord, what do I do? And he said, go to Washington and help your mom. Because my mom owns several businesses. She owns an insurance office, and she also owns a bakery. And so
Very entrepreneurial.
I told my son's father, I told my son's father, and what's funny about that? I always used to say, I'm not a businesswoman. And the Lord had to correct me and say, stop saying that. You are a businesswoman. So funny.
Wow.
So,
wow. There's so much I can say about that, but I want to hear your story.
So I told my son's father, I need to go to Washington and help my mom so I can get back on my feet and stuff like that. He said, if you take my son out of the state, I'm going to take him from you. You're never going to see him again. So he launched into this huge custody battle, right? That went on, spent all kind of money on attorneys, all kind of stuff. And I would go to court, and listen, I'm telling you, the court system is so corrupt. I had no idea until I got in it. And, they usually favor mothers, right? But let me tell you what kind of spiritual warfare I was in. Everybody shut me down. Everyone shut me down as the mom. I'm a teacher. I am, was putting my son through private school, all this stuff, but every judge we stood before, everybody shut me down. Absolutely everybody. Like I was in court a couple of times, like raising my hand, trying to get a word in, because it was like my son's father, the judge, and the court appointed attorney for my son. They were all having conversation, making decisions. And I'm just sitting there getting railroaded left and right. Yeah. And so all that was going on, lost custody of my son, and ended up losing my house foreclosed, sheriff and everything, like in the matter of 3 days. All of this stuff happened. Lose the house, lose the son, and then 3 days later, have to get kicked out of my house. So I went living in my car for a little while, and it was a mess in Tucson. And so what I was doing was like going to Starbucks during the day, because I have a bachelor's degree in journalism. I was like, I can write some content articles. So I'd use their Wi-Fi during the day, and I was writing content articles for like 2 and 3 cents a word. So basically I would write as many articles as I could during the day, making like $10 total for like 5 articles a day, like $2 an article. This is back in 2011. Wow. And so I was, just going through that, trying to figure it out. And in January of 2011, I actually started writing books. I did a tester to see if I could write a book, publish a book, and put it out there. And I was able to do that. And it was kind of just a little silly book called First Class Foolishness about my son and I. Just had pictures of us and little sayings, because we always have had a really great relationship. And, we used to just say fun things together. Like he asked me one day, Mom, is it better to burn your mouth, or when your food is, when your food is too hot, burn your mouth, or wait? And I was like, burn your mouth. It's like, just go ahead and eat, because we're big eaters. We love food and stuff like that.
Oh my gosh.
And then like one time I spit some gum on the ground in the road, and he's like, Mom, you're not supposed to litter. And I said, I'm helping keep the road together with the gum and stuff. So we used to just have those kind of conversations together and stuff like that. And so I wrote a little funny book about him and I was able to publish it. And then so I ran into a person from my Baptist church, which I was actually working. I worked at my church for a little while. I worked in children's preschool for like 10 years, doing that. And when my house was foreclosing and everything, I was asking them for help. And they said, yeah, we can give you, a couple, like 4 months to get you caught up on your mortgage and stuff like that. But they didn't have any sustainable resources. And I'm like, I needed something more tangible than money. I need some wisdom that's going to help me get out of this situation and not, just be struggling and drowning the way I am. And they had no resource for me. So I'm like, if I don't want your money, I need something more sustainable than that. I need to be able to, to know that the Lord can help me get through this. And they weren't able to do that. This was the biggest church in Tucson, Arizona. And they had no wisdom for the situation that I was going through. So, it was just ridiculous. Like they couldn't give you some kind of help, like tangible help, to get you beyond, because money, you do need money for things, and money can help you with some things. But seriously, if you're going to end up in the same situation, 4 months later, what good is the money going to do you? Right. I wanted wisdom. There are times when wisdom is going to supersede money. And that's what I was looking for. And they couldn't give it. Out of all those people and all those ministers and all those counselors and all those people at the church, they didn't have anything to help me through the spiritual warfare. And so I was like, I'm done with this. And I was done with people pretty much. I was like, I'm just going to have to work this out myself, whatever it is. But a friend that worked with me, and she's now my ministry partner, ended up becoming my mentor first and then my best friend. And she ran into me out at the mall, because when I would have my son, since I was, homeless, we would have to go somewhere, of course, during the day. So, so that I could spend time with him. And so we ran into her out at one of the malls, and she said, I heard you wrote a book. Would you be willing to go to lunch with me and show me how to do that? I'd like to write a book. And I was like, okay, let me think about it. So I went back and I prayed and I said, Lord, should I go? I don't really know who I can trust. What should I do? And he said to me, yes, go with her. You can trust her. You can tell her everything. So we went out to lunch and I told her everything that was going on. And she was like, well, first of all, you've got to tackle the spirit of fear, because it's just dripping over you. And, you can't make decisions like that. Mm-hmm. And since then, I've learned to see the spirit of fear sitting on people, like it sits on people's head. Like, how you put your kids up there on your shoulders and walk. The spirit of fear sits on people like that. I've seen it before. Wow. So that's what I was going through at the time. And so she and I met again. And when she came back the second time, she said, you need to start sewing your pennies. And I was like, I don't have any pennies to sew. I'm like, I'm making $2, $2 an article here. I don't have any pennies to sew. And she was like, you need to do it. You really need to do it. Because apparently the Lord had told her, she had prayed and said, Lord, how can I help her? She said, tell her to sew. And she told God, she doesn't have anything to sew. And she was like, who do you think needs to sew? The people who are poor. And so she came back and she told me about her 2-penny testimony.
I want the audience to hear that again, Zari. That was so good. Who needs to sew?
Who needs to sew? People that are poor, right? That's exactly who needs to sew. And if you could start out with pennies, then you have no reason, because you can find pennies on the ground, right? In your couch, in your car, somewhere. I know you can find some pennies somewhere. So, and then, since I've learned that, I am a sewing machine. That's how I live. I've lived that since I got it down. So I'm like, fine, I'll start sewing. And then she invited me to her church, because she had since left the Baptist church too. Because at some point, if you're really hungry for the Lord, you can't stay in that,
Exactly.
And you know how people say, oh, well, the Lord hasn't released me. Seriously, the Lord wants you sitting in a dead church? Okay, I can believe that one. As much relationship as he has for you, he wants you sitting in a church where they tell you things like, you're not having visitations, you're not having dreams. And I'm like, yes, I am. Matter of fact, it's so funny. One time I was in my room praying face down, just giving worship to the Lord. And Jesus walked into my room, walked right past me, just put his hand on his shoulder and just kept walking through. And I told somebody at the Baptist church that one day, and they looked at me like, and I was like, so we claim to worship this God, right? But then when he shows up, this alive God, this resurrected God, but when he shows up, we don't believe it. Foolishness. I can't deal with that stuff anymore. And not at all. I don't have patience for that anymore. I've seen too much with my Lord since then.
Me either. Yep.
So
actually 2023, it's been 10 years since I left the church. So
yeah. It's been, so I left in 2011. So that's like 12. Yeah. So, and that's when I grew. I left the church and just stuck with the Lord by myself, and I took off, man. Everything in the heavenlies opened up for me. It shouldn't be that way though. It should not be that way at all. So sad. So sad. Yeah. So she invited me to her church. It was a different church. They were a little bit more charismatic. They don't have the sewing thing though. They don't get it. This is another one. It's like the second biggest church in Tucson, and they don't have sewing either. They're like, well, we don't want to offend people talking about money and stuff like that. So they do like the Dave Ramsey and stuff that's, it's there, but it doesn't give you the supernatural aspect of it, which that's the one that opens up the wild wealth for you, is the supernatural aspect. So, they're still missing out on that type of stuff, but that leaves Tucson wide open for us to teach this. And that's why we're having this conference in April, at the end of April.
Yeah, so I love that. My Money Grows on Trees conference in April. And if you're in the area in Tucson, you can definitely go to register at, is it 1123.life?
1123.life, yes.
Yes. And tell them the story about the 1123.
Yeah, because Mark 11:23. Listen, I got a hold of that from Kenneth Hagin. Man, love it. And so that's how I live. Listen, when the Lord was bringing me out of all my drama, he took me back a couple times and showed me things that I had spoken in my past life, throughout my life, that put me in the situation that I was in. Like he said, you kept saying your house was going to foreclose. You said it over and over and over again. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my house. What happened? You lost your house. He was like, stop saying that. He told me that I used to always say, I wish I had never met my son's father. He said, you allowed the enemy to come in and take him because you were constantly saying you wish you'd never met him. Well, without the father, there's no son. So you can't walk around saying things like that. Let me tell you, I've gotten my mouth pretty much in control since then. I'm a lot less out of control with my words, but I used to be just bad. It was horrible.
I've had my mouth have to wash out with soap too, by the Lord. I get it.
Yeah. So bad.
Oh my gosh. So good.
So I started sewing, right? So I'd make like $8 a day. So I give my 80 cents tithe and then put like 27 cents on top of that, whatever I could spare. Next thing you know, my articles are like paying $5 each. Then they're paying $10 each. Then they're paying $50 each. And this is a matter of, I'm telling you, like a month. He took me from sleeping in the car to being able to afford hotels to being able to rent a room. That's how quick it was. Okay. You know why? Because faith. Like when that faith gets there and it meets your sowing and you're the word of God and you're like focused and intentional and diligent about what you're doing, everything just explodes for you. That's something that the Lord has said, heaven meets your expectations. So when you're sowing in faith and you're expecting this harvest to be returned to you, then it comes. And then I started increasing that way. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, if this works, I'm going to be giving all the time, So I just started giving. And I've been giving ever since then. I've lived my life that way now. Like I've only worked, like one job since that time. And it was just a short amount of time. Like when I didn't have custody of my son, I worked at the airline for a little while so that I could fly back and forth for free to see him. And, but I have not had to depend on a job or anything since that time. I'm all with the Lord. He brought me out of complete poverty and he just keeps increasing me and increasing me and increasing me. Let me tell you something. I sewed on March 1st, 2023. I sewed my best friend Patty Cake $1 for a paid vacation. And I just came back from that vacation on Monday. Everything was paid for. I paid $29. I paid $20 in gas and I paid $9 for our coffee one day. Everything else was paid for. The hotels, the food, everything at the resort, everything was paid for, taken care of because I sold that $1.
Oh my God.
And then On the 4th, I sewed $1 for some running shoes because I'm a runner, and I had, I needed some new running shoes. Running shoes go fast, 300 miles. You're not supposed to put more than that on shoes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get shoes, and I got to get them now. And so I sewed $1. The next day I had this coupon that knocked my shoes. They were like 70% off. And I was like, there go my shoes. So the Lord does that stuff for you, and then the thing you have to understand about sewing is you can't replace your tithe with sewing. Tithing is your covenant protection. Tithing is your covenant protection. It puts that hedge around you. It gives you all the blessings of Malachi 3:10-12. Your sowing is on top of that, right? And then there's also, of course, there's alms, which is given to the poor. And that's like for like. The Lord says that's lending to him and he repays. So you have to understand these different types of giving. And I believe I explained all of that in the book. But sowing into Revelation is what really, really, really set me off. Because it came out of developing intimacy with the Lord, just sitting with him. And he started revealing secrets and things like that to me. And every time he would reveal a secret to me, I would give him a seed, a thank you for that. And the reason I do that is because he told me one day, I ask questions. Some people think it's wrong to ask the Lord the questions, which is bizarre because he's your father. Why would you not want to ask your father questions, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So I ask him questions all the time. And I'm like, well, how did they get that? How did that happen for them? How did that work for them? And he told me flat out one day, he mentioned like 3 different pastors' names. And he said, the reason that they're so prosperous is because every time I give them revelation, they sow me a thank you seed. And so what happens is he's telling you something, you give him a thank you, right? And then you reap what you sow. So you're sowing into that revelation. That revelation is going to increase and increase and increase and increase and increase. So the Lord's giving me all this revelation. I'm sowing into all this and just prospering left and right. Boom, 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 boom. Prospering left and right simply because of that situation. And when, like, if somebody releases a prophetic word to me, releases a blessing to me, I'm sowing into that because I want to take possession of it. And it's all about covenant. So when I'm sowing into something, I'm entering into a covenant with that person. Remember, covenant says that whatever I have, you have, right? Whatever you have, I have. It's building things together. And that's how the kingdom is supposed to work. If we all are, we're building these little pockets of covenant together. Listen, do you see how big we could get, how huge we could get, and we could keep big prosperity in the body of Christ? Yeah, that's the way the Lord has it set up. It's so amazing. There's no reason to be in this broken Babylonian system that's based on slavery when the Lord said seed time and harvest, as long as the earth remains, Genesis 8:22. There is no better system than what he set up. And he set it up so that you can prosper. Job, no job, nothing. Let me tell you about my son. I taught my kiddo how to sew right after I learned how to sew, right? This man's 21 years old, never had a job, always has money, and he is wealthy already. This kid buys Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Billionaire Boys Club. Like, I don't even buy that much stuff because I'm casual. I'm like a Gap girl. That's about it. That's all I need. And he buys $600 Nike Jordan retros and stuff like that because he sews. He is a big giver. I've taught him to give. He's already up to 30% giving, right off the bat. And then he also sews into things. He's a gamer, a professional gamer. And he has had, those gaming computers, they're $3,000 at the drop of a hat. He's had 3 of them in his lifetime, and he sews for them. The very first one he got, he sewed a little bit, and we kept it, kept a little record. He started out sewing. He ended up sewing $147. And then at that point, after he'd sewed that much into the kingdom for his computer, his grandparents called and said, we'll buy you that gaming computer. So $3,000 right there. So the second one he needed, sewed for that one, he got it. Third one he needed just this last November, sewed for that and got it. Wow. I'm telling you, sewing works. There's no reason for anybody to live any other way. Any other way. If it works for a 21-year-old, he's been sewing since he was like 13, something like that, then it works for anybody. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Oh, good. That is just
absolutely
amazing.
Yes.
I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around professional gamer because it just seems so.
I know. I know. It is wild. Yeah. But the Lord gave him a word. I spoke at a conference back in 2016, and this lady came from North Carolina. It was weird. Like, she just showed up. She just happened to be in town. We were having a conference at this hotel. She came into the conference and started prophesying to everybody. And she told my son, she was like, God's going to use gaming in your life.
Wow.
So I can't argue about it. It was in his book. So it was in his book. So all I do is support him, pray for him, all of that stuff. And he sews his way through it. So.
Oh my gosh, that is so good. So good. Wow. So you've had a couple different businesses, is that correct?
I have the media business, Zari Inc.
Mhm.
and which is like the books and things like that. And then I'm a part owner in my family's bakery and everything. And then we have a ministry, 1123 Ministries. The Lord gave that to me in October 2019. And I just barely got it going in 2021. It only took me 2 years to be obedient, but I did it finally. And we are just a giving ministry. We just take in, we teach, and we pour out. That's what we do.
Mhm. And so Mark 11:20, I'm just looking at the website.
1123, yes.
11:23.
I say to you, yes. Jesus, yes.
Yes, exactly. So
it mountain be lifted up and thrown into the sea.
Yep, say it for the peeps. I'm just looking it up because I know you have it on your website.
Amen. I'm saying to you, if anyone, you can speak to this mountain, say, be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and it will be done for you. And then it goes on in 11:24 and 25. It's like, believe in your heart, you will have what you say. And then 25, of course, says, when you stand praying, forgive. You have got to forgive, right? That's not a question. You do it. Forgive, bless, and release. And let me tell you, your enemies will end up serving you. They'll be removed or they'll have consequences. So,
so good. Awesome.
and I have testimony of that too. My son's father serves me now. All the havoc that he caused in my life, and he serves me now.
Oh my gosh. What can you tell us what that looks like, or is that private?
Absolutely. Well, one thing is I don't really like to drive. I'm a homebody, so I stay at home most days. Like there are days there are weeks that I don't even drive. I drive maybe like one day that week. Yeah. But my son doesn't drive either, and we live way far away from his father. So when they are having visitation or whatever, it's not visitation anymore because he's that kid. But instead of me having to drive down there, he drives all the way up here and picks him up, drives all the way back to bring him down. So that's service, right?
Oh, I see. Yes.
Matter of fact, that's how I got him back in custody. Have you heard that testimony?
I have not. Go ahead.
Okay, I got him back, not through the natural courts, but through the courts of heaven. So after I lost custody of him, I prayed and I asked the Lord, how do I get my son back? And this is what he said to me, pray for your enemies. So I prayed for my enemies for 2 days and I'm like, can I have him back now? And he didn't say a word, of course, because that was not sufficient. And then so I ended up praying for my enemies for 18 months. So wow. I got serious with it, did a process, prayed for my enemies, and I actually wrote a devotional based on that process called, Oh Lord, Forgive Them, 30 Days of Praying for Your Enemies. Oh, wow. Prayed for my enemies for 18 months, right? And then the last 2 months of that, I did a 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. fourth watch prayer. So I'd get up in the morning, read the Bible, worship, and just pray. And the 3 days before that 50 days was up, I had this visitation and I'm standing in heaven. And I thought back then, because this was back in 2012. That was the first time I went to the courts of heaven and I didn't know where I was. I thought it was just a throne room, but there was a judge sitting there. Jesus was standing there at my right, like the attorney. And there was this huge angel, this massive angel with 1 foot in the courtroom and 1 foot on the earth. And I'm just standing around looking like, what in the world is going on? Nobody says anything, right? Wow. So I go the next day, I'm having the same visitation. I'm doing up my prayer and all this stuff, I'm having the same visitation. And this time, this fiery cross shows up in between the judge and that big angel that's standing there. And I hear, it is finished. 3 days later, Bralynn, my son's father called and said, you can have him back. Courts of heaven. Yes. And it was after, because that bitter root of unforgiveness, I'm telling you, remember I told you before Patty and I hooked up, I was done with people. I didn't want anything to do with people. And I was mad and I was bitter and I was angry. And the Lord had to pluck up that root of unforgiveness. And as soon as he plucked it up, I was right into the courts of heaven. And this is something that I've learned. Like people will say, I can't get in the courts of court. I can guarantee you got unforgiveness in your life. God does not play that in the courts. You can get a verdict for anything in your favor as long as you have forgiven, which is what he requires. And Job went through that exact thing. Remember, he was saying, I'm just. He didn't know what was going on. He wasn't following biblical protocol. Right? The Lord said, when he got him there, he said, I didn't ask you if you were just. I said that you need to forgive, which he did. He prayed for those enemies. And then he got 2 times, right? Forgiveness is how you enter into those gates. That's how you get into those courts. Unforgiveness will keep you out and it will keep you from getting any verdict, not to mention the sickness that it causes you, the stress that it causes you, all of that, right? So I had to get that bitter root plucked up. And man, as soon as I did, the Lord moved on my behalf and I got custody of my son back. 3 days. 3 days after I heard it is finished, my son's father called me and said, you can have him back. Didn't have anything to do with the natural court. I won all of that in the courts of heaven.
Yay, God. That's just astounding. Yay, God. Wow. Whew.
This is why I get hype about the Lord. He's done too much for me. And you can't tell me nothing.
I know, right?
You cannot tell me that my God is not faithful, okay? Because I have seen too much. And just like when I tell them, some of the weird things that we experience, I'm like, God is weird, where else are you going to find angels with eyes all over, wings and everything? Come on now, you just got to accept it. He is weirdy. If you want to roll in his realms, just accept it. You're right. You just accept it. Just keep moving. So, you can't tell me anything. You can't tell me anything. Like people say, you're lying. You haven't experienced that in heaven. Oh, yes, I have. And more. Right. You just don't know.
Right. So, experiencing those things, and then you said you said something in church and people just look at you like you have 3 heads, right?
Yeah.
So are there things though that the Lord shows you that you feel that you're not supposed to share with people? Do you get that kind of revelation that's like, oh, this is just for me and I just need to keep this?
Probably.
Yeah.
There are things that is like not at that time. Like when he first started teaching me about time back in 2016, I was kind of afraid because it seemed so big to me and so, like that's like out there and stuff like that. So it took me a while to kind of ease into receive that revelation and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think it's more like once I try not to share a bunch of stuff till I have a decent amount of understanding about it anyway.
Right.
So he probably tempers it that way, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
So it's like,
Yeah, I know that there's some things that he has told me or shared with me or I've gotten revelation on, and I'm like, oh Lord, I'm going to have to sit on this, from my point of view, like, oh, I can't say this yet. I'm going to need more to flesh this out. I need to ground it in the word. I need to like, Jesus, show me more. There's that kind. And then there's also, wow, Lord, that was super personal. And I feel like that is not to be shared. That's something that if he needs the world to know that, he'll make that happen.
Well, I think it's probably like that with, because I dream a lot about politicians and stuff like that and get intersensory assignments, that type of stuff. Yeah. I don't put all of that stuff out there.
Right.
But, as far as revelation goes, I may not be that special yet to get.
No, don't say that. Don't say that. Here's the thing. He knows that you're a teacher, right? And so when we've got a lot of the same blood. So when we learn something, we want to share it because learn it more, right? Yeah. So I get that urge to just, I learned something, and so now I want to share it. And then if there's some more unpacking, sometimes in the sharing, something else will get
revelation downloads.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know how it is.
Yeah, I totally get that. So you also have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. It's called Praying with Power and Purpose, and I've been doing it since May 2012. Yeah,
that is started just amazing.
Because listen, after the Lord delivered me out of poverty and my son, he asked me, he was like, would you tell people about what I've done for you? I was like, absolutely. I'm gonna tell everybody. So I started that podcast, and then Patty Cake pushed me out into video and stuff like that. Cause I do this, and because I'm passionate about the Lord, I can do it. You know what I mean? But I would not choose to be on screen at any time. That's, I'd rather just do audio and stuff like that. But she pushed me out there into video and stuff. And then of course the Lord, we talked about this in Ecclesia, the Lord's like, I've wanted TV for you for a long time. And I'm like, but why? Why would you want that type of thing? What difference does it make? Why can't I just do audio? Because my mentor, my apostle that I've had since I left the church, he does all audio stuff. He doesn't do any video. I'm like, and he's got a huge ministry. I'm like, why can't I do that?
Okay. Audience, I want you to comment wherever you're watching or listening to this. You tell Zari why she needs to be on video because you've seen it. they see how much you're bright, you light everything up, and your frequency of your image, and seeing your smile and watching your eyes, and it means something. Sorry. So you have that little it factor for video.
I'll receive it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that'll be cool. So Zari TV.
I do. That is what it's called. ZTV. It's so funny.
Okay. Oh, ZTV. Oh my God, that's good.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'll be a show on your ZTV network.
I would love that. I would love that.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I know. I love podcasting. I started, do you remember Blab? Way back in the day, there was Periscope, which started, it was like off of a Twitter.
Yeah.
And after Periscope, there was something called Blab. And it was such a cool platform because we could be having a conversation like this, and then anywhere in the world could like chime in, and you could bring them on screen and start having conversation, and then kick them out and bring the next person on. And so it was so cool. Yeah, so that would have been in 2016. I was doing Blab TV, but then they never had a platform for sustainability, so they just kind of evaporated. But they got too big and couldn't handle the bandwidth anymore, I guess.
All right.
So then
there's an opportunity for you to bring something like that back.
I know, right? If I were a techie kind of a person who would understand that the coding of how those were created and stuff. So so that was really cool. And then Gil Hodges had Kingdom Talks, and that's where most of my audience came from, was Kingdom Talks, because he brought me on as a co-host because I think he knew that I had some TV experience. I was an actress for 30, I don't know how many years,
see that.
Whatever. Yeah. So I've loved doing stage work because I love having the frequency of the, feeling the audience's energy and all of that stuff, and acting a character. And that's actually part of my healing journey too, because it was unsafe for me to just be me. I had to play a character. Right. So anyway, so that's where that started. And so I totally understand that you would want to continue where you're comfortable with, but I think the Lord is calling you to more, girlfriend.
Yes, he is. And I'm okay with that. I trust him. So.
Oh, good. So 2012, though, that's a long time to have a podcast. That's amazing. Where can people find that podcast?
You can find it on Apple Podcasts. It's on Amazon. You can go to my YouTube channel. It's called Zari Banks Inc. And you can find all the things I do there. We have a Saturday evening service, right at the start of the new week, just blessing the Lord, reading through the Bible. And my ministry is kind of weird. I do everything differently than the way somebody else would do it. And you just have to accept that with me, because
it's all good.
Different. I just am different. I don't do canned sermons. I teach the word just specifically. We're just reading through the word. And I don't even know why people sit there and watch that, but they do. And it's because I love the word, and I want people to understand this is Jesus that you are consuming here as you're reading this. And so look for him in all of those pieces, meet with him. Don't just read the word by yourself, let them be with you and teach you and get all that. So I'm just trying to instill like a real genuine love of the word. You do need to know it, but I want you to know it, like intimately know it, and get to know them. I don't ever want anybody to be told the foolishness that I was told, like you'll never be intimate with the Godhead because of who you are. Everybody should be intimate with the Godhead. And that's something that I always tell everybody in our ministry. Listen, you have got to be able to see him face to face and hear those things coming out of his mouth, so that you know that you heard from the Lord, and nobody can take that from you. There's people out there who say, well, I used to be a believer, but I'm not a believer anymore. I don't believe all that. And I was like, well, you didn't meet them face to face. Well, get in there and meet them face to face, because once you get in there, you're not leaving. You're not going anywhere. Nobody has anything, that compares to what they have. You're not going to separate from that. It is impossible to leave all that goodness, all that love, all that everything that there is. You can't walk away from that. It's just too much. It's too much, especially as painful as this world is out here. You can't walk away from that. Like that's your refuge. You can't walk away from it.
And people talk about actually one of the reasons though I started Spirit-Centered Business is because people have their business over here and God over here.
Right. Yeah.
And they're separated. And I can't even imagine. I can't even almost not speak a sentence that I'm not either asking the Lord, what should I say? Or literally I talking about the Lord. I mean, it's out, right?
Me too. It's funny. Patty Cake and I, we do so much together because neither of us work outside the home, but we talk in scripture, you know what I mean? We're like talking, it's just ridiculous. Like some of the stuff, it's funny. I'm like, other people hearing these conversations, they probably wouldn't know what was going on. They think we're crazy or something. And then it's funny because I'm single still and I'm always by myself. So I'm constantly talking to the Lord. And if somebody were to walk in, they'd be like, oh, what's she going to do?
Oh my gosh. Me too, girlfriend. Me too. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We really do need to do something together. I think we really should. Audience, leave a comment. Would you want Zari and I to do something together? I think that would be amazing. Oh my gosh. I think we need to land this plane for segment 1, girlfriend, because we're going to get into segment 2 and you're going to teach some more about sewing, some more about tithing. Let's dive a little bit deeper into literally building the prosperity and being a prosperity magnet and having my money grow on trees. Love that. Okay, so just to wrap this up, the best website is 1123.life, and I will definitely put it in the show notes below. And let's see. Oh, the conference. I want to make sure that if you're in the Tucson area, you can still get to that conference, which is in April. And if it's past April when you're listening to this, just go to her website and pick up some great stuff over there. It'll be great. And find out what else. Maybe there's other events, or maybe she and I will have launched something. Who knows? Okay. Throwing it out there. All right, you guys, until next time, stay spirit-centered. Peace out.
Hey there, SCB peeps. I want to give a huge shout out and deep appreciation and thanks to Candace Benton. She has become a super sponsor for the Spirit-Centered Business show. So I would appreciate you helping me in sending blessings and abundance back to her. Thank you so much, Candace, and you are well loved.
Thank you for listening to Spirit-Centered Business with Bralynn Newby. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. The next stage of doing business by being spirit-centered is coming together in collaboration, working with spiritual principles and knowing our destiny. Join our tribe at SpiritCenteredBusiness.com, and we'll catch you on the next broadcast. Peace out.